Next, we will talk about mobility as a service, which is of course tightly related to today's theme, which is sustainability. Next, we have Sampo Hietanen, the CEO and founder of MaaS Global, explaining how digital platforms are enabling sustainability in mobility.
Hello everyone, my name is Sampo Hietanen. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called MaaS Global. We're known of a mobile app called WIM, which is the world's first mobility as a service app or company itself. Mobility as a service is a concept I'm known as a father of, but it's actually born right here behind you in Finland, in Helsinki. It tells a lot how the disruption and how transportation or mobility will look like after the digital transformation. I'm here to tell about how these platforms actually enable the change. They're not the change itself, but they enable quite a lot, a different thinking. You may have seen in Singapore Straits Times or many other media about this. And the reason is quite simple. Why would there be Bloomberg's or Wall Street Journals or Forbes writing about a concept born in a small country like Finland, born in a small company? And the reason is quite simple and has to do with asking questions. Oftentimes when we talk about digitalization, we talk about technology quite a lot, but not really what does it do. It enables a lot, but then sometimes it's not so much about finding the answer, it's about asking the right questions. And for us, this means daring to ask, and I would really argue the biggest question of our times, both for productivity gains, means economic growth, but definitely for sustainability. And that question is this simple. What would it take for you, for an individual, to really give up their own cars? What would it take for you? What would I here today have to promise so that you would give up your car? We exist to be better than car ownership for at least 1 million persons by 2030. This doesn't happen by ideology. This happens through service, through design, through actually using the technology for something that is better for people. What does it mean? We often plan cities and everything for the archetype here, you see above, car taking you from A to B. We would love to maybe say that, okay, shouldn't we be designing for something that you see below there? And which one of these are more right? And the real answer is neither one or both of them. Because we're not one people. We're not always wanting to do it this way or we're not wanting to do it that way. If we really want to illustrate the new world of mobility, it looks a bit more like this. We have options, taking the car. We have options of taking the bike. We have options of walking, using a car, bus, park, all of these things. But the reality of these is often described this way. We see the archetypes of different mobility in a way that you have a taxi ride. You plan, you hail, you ride, you pay, you arrive. Or you do something with a cycle, you bike. You walk, unlock, cycle, lock, and arrive. And this is what we plan for. But the reality, if we really go after the experience of car ownership, if we really want to design, this is what we have to deal with. This is what we're designing. It's booking, boarding, having been rerouted, fueling, queuing, reserving, having road rage, seating, finding something your way in signals, being in hubs and all of this. To really design for life, of really making this, it is about simplicity. And this is what digitalization should be about. Not about technology at hand, but actually making things simple. Our competition is extremely good. It's well designed, it's easy, it's convenient. Having your own car loyally waiting for you right there. If we want to make it, we need everything else. In a way, we are your skeleton key to your city. We need routing to be there. We need planning, we need ticketing, we need payments, we need all kinds of different ways of buying this, even as like you do with the Netflix, as a subscription of everything there, and even worldwide. The theme of digitalization and what we need to be enabling for people is quite simple. I've been around the world, including Singapore many times, whether it's in LA or Tokyo or in Paris. And when I ask really people, what would I here have to promise so that you would give up your car? And of course, give me the same money. What would be as valuable as that? They always say the same thing. And it is, if I could promise really promise, anywhere, anytime, on a whim. Just like that, without any planning. And if I can deliver, okay, then I'll think about it. What it then really needs is for us to have all of these together. What do you really want also as convenience? Yes, car is a part of it, but instead of owning a car that you use about 4% of the time, you have a garage full of cars. You need everything handy there in a convenient way. Mobility is something that we all are using roughly about 71 minutes per day. We use that a lot. We want the convenience. We want that freedom. This thing of sustainable mobility will not be solved by just efficiency. It has to be a part of that, like the T-Ford used to be, but it is solved by solving people's or fulfilling people's dreams. And the dream of freedom of mobility is just so strong that we have to find something that is as lucrative as owning a car. Now, is this a big issue? I claimed there that this is the biggest question we're asking. What would be more valuable than owning a car? Will be a biggest driver for world economic growth. And I argue this is true. If we think that about 20% of household budget is transportation, is mobility, the average revenue per user, if we compare this with the revolution that happened in telecom industry when the mobile phones hit this, and we see a completely different field now with innovations and everything, we're talking about 10 times as big ARPU, the average revenue per user here. Out of that value, 76% of people's money lie on an asset, car, that is used about 4% of the time. Now, if anybody out there shows or can tell me a bigger way of productivity gains for a productivity leap, please do, but there isn't any. So of course, someone will solve this. This will be solved, and actually we're solving it as we speak. As to sustainability, transport or mobility is the only sector that hasn't improved since the 90s. Cars have improved a lot, but the overall emissions, they've stayed stable or even grown. The only industry that's that. Today, we account for 25% of carbon emissions. By 2030, it appears that mobility will be 40% of all the emissions. We all understand this cannot be accepted. But we cannot solve this without bringing something as lucrative to people, solving their freedom. Otherwise, it's going to be a struggle. Trying to restrict them is never the best way of solving things. We have to if there's no other way. At the same time, we have made a study of quite an extensive study in European big cities. Today, 38% of car owners, they would give up their car if they have something like what we're bringing, a convenient subscription for everyone with access to everything. So that means today alone, 70 million cars are waiting to be replaced. All we need to do is use the digitalization, use these platforms, use these to actually capture the value of about $10 trillion or euro market that is out there. It is relatively big issue that we are solving. Now, here's the good news. Why the digital platforms or digitalization can actually solve this issue. It is because the components to compare or compete with car ownership, and that means that I have to have public transport, the taxi-like services, ride hails, micromobility, car shares, car rentals, even the ferries here in Helsinki need to be part of that to be able to fulfill that dream of freedom of mobility. The good news is they do exist. Those physical investments to create the scenario that compares with car ownership, they exist. Whether I am in Rio de Janeiro or Singapore, the public transport, the taxis, the car shares, the car rentals, actually the supply is growing. All we have to do is digitally combine them and find the next big dream for people. And the next big dream for people, if I ask anywhere, is what if I told you with the same money that you're spending in your car every month, I will give you access to all world's buses, trains, metros, taxis, car shares, scooters, bikes, whatever you can think of. Not just here, but when you're in New York, the same applies. And that starts to be a dream, because what the car was actually providing is the world open for us. But that world is limited to how much we're willing to drive. But if instead I say same money, the whole world, and that's when you start dreaming. And this is all about dreams. Here's the hard part. Mobility is big. This is where digitalization comes to play. We all need to understand that this ecosystem will not be owned by anyone. This really is an ecosystem, not an ecosystem. We also have this kind of a, let's say, platform economy 1.0 thought that somebody will be in a bottleneck position and somehow control this ecosystem. It's not going to happen in mobility. The cities, the governments will not allow one player to rule it all. This is not possible in a field like this. The only thing, and this is why we need also the governments and cities in this play, is to make up the game rules. Really make it into an ecosystem. What we need to get is all the resources to actually compete with the dream of mobility. This is funny because whenever I talk, whether it's in Singapore or somewhere else, and I talk to normal people, and by normal people I mean people that are not in mobility industry, they say, of course, my mobility, just like Netflix, every access to everything, obvious. This is how it always should have been. This is how I would like it. And then they say, this is actually not rocket science. Why isn't it here yet? But it is, because it's such a big industry where everybody seeks for control, and we don't have the game rules yet. The platform rules are actually the biggest innovations in this. Eventually, this is what we all should be aspiring, and should be a dream for all of us, that we can also live exactly the life you want with the same quality that you have now, but without the need of owning a car. If you really think, and this is something I need to debug immediately in the end, that you might be thinking there, especially, and I get to blame us because I'm a 40-plus man. I tend to get this, and if we were now live in Singapore, over cocktails, someone over 40 man would come to me and knock and say, well, yeah, maybe they're in Finland, but we Singapore, we Australians, we Americans, we love to own our cars. And that's actually not true. That may be true for 40, 50 plus men, but if you look at the ones that we're building the future for, the 20 plus, they don't really love it. Look at Stockholm, where only 9% of the youngsters even get a driver's license. They will eventually, because their living standard is not good when they're suburbanized with 2 kids, because we didn't design this for them. Now we have a chance to do it. But there's even a chance that gave me a heart attack. We just got a 5-star rating a while ago in App Store from a 50-plus man who said that he's been using the BMWs and Mercedes for about 40 years of his life, and now has given a chance for subscription, a mobility subscription, MaaS, if you want, and he's already exceeded all his expectations. So look, if there's hope for 50, 40 plus men, there's hope for the world as well. But what it needs is collaboration, game rules, utilizing the digitalization, not taking it as something that is self-servant. We need to use it to answer the question, what would be better than owning a car? Thank you.